We have a quorum in the spot?
We have a forum.
Okay.
You tell me Rod City Deal with it.
Junior should be here too. I'm sure, yeah. Never met.
I mean,
Oh, I'm not hearing the recording in progress over there. Speakers. Should be. All right, it is 5 o'clock and we will call to order the July 15, 2024 P and Z work session meeting. At this time, we'll open up for public comments. If anybody would wish to make a comment, please limit those comments to 3 minutes and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Seeing no one online.
None in person, we'll go ahead and close the public comments and we'll turn the meeting over to our Assistant Planning Director, Kelly Atkinson. Good evening.
There we go. Alrighty, so looking at our regular agenda tonight, we have one consent case on the agenda, which is a plat case. And it's basically just another phase of a preliminary plat that's been approved. And then our second case on our regular agenda, Jason will present for you all tonight. And that one is for our RV park, so it's going to have the conditional use permit. I didn't know if you guys had any questions on either of those cases. All right. Any questions on the director's report this evening? Nope. All right. We're just sailing right along. All right. So then I will go ahead and let you guys move to your item number 3 so we can give ample amount of time to Richard on his presentation this evening. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Richard Wilson. I'm your city engineer. A couple of months ago, I think it's been a few months, Brian.
You might have to read that item.
Oh, good. Okay, good. All right.
Item 3, presentation on proposed wastewater improvements along South Highway 217.
Okay. Well, I'm still Richard Wilson, your city engineer. A few months ago, Brian Chandler asked me to come speak about wastewater service along 317. It's been a couple of delays. We had a study that was underway that I wanted to have complete before we came to speak. And then we had a couple of storms. And so here I am tonight. This first slide is a copy, an image of our water and wastewater master plan, or just the wastewater master plan that was done in 2019 by KPA. And you can see that the city is divided up into different sewer basins based on topography. And the one we're talking about tonight is called the Leon River wastewater basin, and it's highlighted in that dark blue. And you'll see a little bit of in the top has a different shade. That is the Cedar Ridge drainage basin. And the reason it's a different shade is because it drains towards a different part of the lake. So I'm going to start at the bottom and work our way up in the drainage basin. This is a slide that shows the Temple Belton wastewater treatment plan in the lower section of the slide. There's a 10-inch force main and a lift station and a 36-inch water main that were built a couple of years ago. And that slide label I put on there was wrong, but the next phase that we're going to do is Leon River Trunk Sewer Phase 2, and that's highlighted in red. And that begins where the other main ended, left off. There's about 8,500 feet of 30-inch wastewater main. And there's a lift station and force main that's going to be decommissioned here. And then another lift station is going to be upgraded, which was at Leon River lift station that I show you there. And I apologize for that text. That comes from a different slide with a different presentation. This design is at 90%. Right-of-way acquisition is underway. The OPC at the latest was $7.5 million. And you can see it runs from about where the water treatment plant is up to the old Poison Oak alignment. And that's where that lift station is that we're going to take out of service. Adjacent to that is in the dashed orange, it doesn't show up very well. It's a master plan future wastewater main. It would go through what is now a low density residential area. This one is not in the plan for development. It's going to be driven by future development. It does have the potential to serve the Miller property, which I had to add on there as of last Monday when we saw that the 707 acre ranch was on the market. So it changes the slide a little bit. You can see on the right-hand section, you can see portions of that property with the quarry up at the north end. One of the interesting things about that ranch is that only part of it is in the wastewater CCN for the city of Temple. And the reason for that is the topography. As you know, 317 is pretty much a dividing line for flows. So if you're on the west side, it flows to the southwest and enters the river in a different portion and doesn't really flow into the area that's shown on these exhibits. So this is another project that's 317 north and south wastewater mains. Again, I apologize, the orange showed up a lot better on my screen, but let me walk over there. So what you can see here is there's an existing wastewater system that ends just north of Adams. This is the Lastavica property. And we had a wastewater project planned for this section. And then another one that extends north of Prairie View along 317. And that north section would serve what's used to be the Bailey subdivision, has a different name now that's proposed.
Preston Hollow.
Okay. Now the lower one, the Lastavica property, we started design on that and started property acquisition and we stopped because they weren't ready to develop. They wanted that line to go around their property, which didn't make any sense because it wouldn't provide any service. So we put on hold pending, future development on the Lastavica property. I tend to go fast, so just slow me down if you want me to slow down and add any detail. This is in reference to the study I was talking about earlier. There's two subdivisions, North Point and
Preston Hollow.
Preston Hollow, okay, that have plats in for approval. Actually, we have construction plans that are being ready to submit. You see the area of future development on 2483, and to the south, some more future development. And the interesting thing about this is we've been talking to Morgan's Point about providing service for their commercial area, their downtown area, so they can fully develop and their quarry could develop. And this whole study area is about 1,000 acres. So the study really looked at lift stations and how do we serve all these different areas, because there's a development on the east side of 317 that flows away. There's a development on the west side of 317 that flows to the north. And then we have three other proposed lift stations. You can see LS2 and LS3 for the undeveloped areas, and LS1 is for the Morgan's Point area. So this study looked at where to situate the lift stations, how many we could have, and what force main and gravity sanitary sewer projects would be required. This is kind of a large view. The trunk sewer on the left is the one that we've been partially describing. It starts out at the wastewater treatment plant and heads north. That's the Leon River trunk sewer. The one on the right is more the Pepper Creek or airport trunk sewer. And you can see that the proposal is we're going to put all this flow into the Leon trunk sewer. And what the analysis did is that if we put it all in Leon, what would we need to do? If we put it all in Pepper Creek, what would you have to do? Or if we split it, what would happen? So the study ended up recommending putting everything in the Leon because the Leon is better suited to handle the additional flows and require less improvements than to Pepper Creek. So, the study came up with OPC, the force main lift station, and part of the gravity sanitary sewer is 4.2 million, and then all the downstream improvements would be another 10.7 million. So it's a very large project. I stuck this slide in last minute because it shows what I was speaking to earlier about the dividing the directional flow from the basins. And it's hard to see, but that is the 707-acre ranch property that it bisects. So everything to the left of that blue line heads in a different direction, heads off to the southwest, and anything on the east side can flow to 317 and be captured in our system. So that was very quick. Any questions or anything you want me to go back over?
Was any of that study or analysis done during these last couple heavy rainfalls that we've gotten this year? Granted, that's an anomaly, but
Yeah.
did we still get a lot at one time? And I've only been here for 5 years, and every time it happens, we always have an issue somewhere. So
So
that been evaluated during this process?
yeah, so so what happens with a lot of rainfalls, there's I&I, infiltration and inflow that gets in the sewer lines and, contributes to the flow. A few years ago, there were some flow measurements taken in a lower part of this basin, primarily from Poison Oak South, that quantify the effect of rainfall on the wastewater system. And those numbers were incorporated into the analysis that's just completed. So, yeah.
Outside of this particular presentation, but it got me thinking with some of the developers seeing off of 93. I know there's some flow issues kind of along the central point there between like 31st and like 5th Street in there. Is there a master plan for anything going on in that region with the, I don't know, the last one that came through, I think was 600 homes around the elementary school?
There is, and I'll just refer back to this master plan. So what we're talking about here is, this is Hartrick Ranch in this area. This is Hartrick Bluff Road. And there's some parcels that haven't been developed north of Hartrick Ranch, and there's one south of Wyndham Hill. So at some point, as these areas get annexed into the city and develop, these trunk sewer lines will be extended up into those areas. So it's another one, it's just developer driven,
Of course.
but there is a plan.
Yeah, okay. I missed that on that slide, so thank you.
So given what we know is coming development wise, and assuming you guys have seen every one of those drainage flow plans, is the city set up to handle the growth that we've approved or that we've put forward to city council at this point? Or how far behind are we?
Okay. So there's two major projects underway right now. One is Williamson Creek that's in the final stages of completion. And it goes from the Williamson Creek lift station on East Adams up to the Mayburn Center. That one's almost complete. So that area is going to be in good shape. We're in phase one of the
But there's not
Creek.
much development over there. There's commercial development, right? Not a whole lot of housing.
There's more coming. There's
Is
more
there? Okay.
coming. And it was needed to handle what was there already
Okay.
because it was another one that was old and it had a lot of infiltration. In the rain, the water would pour in and it would overload. The other one starts at the Dozier treatment plant and swings through Crestview, heads north along 14th Street and up to to near the high school. That one's in phase one, and there are 4 or 5 phases for that one. Once that's complete, that'll handle the build out for that area. For the rest of it, one of the ones we just talked about, Leon River, for build out, that extra $10.7 million worth of work needs to be done
To handle what's coming.
long term. I mean, we're talking about build out. We're talking,
Well,
You know,
right, but
yeah.
what's on paper, what's been approved for rezoning? Like not what's planned, like hasn't been rezoned from ag to something else, what's actually been rezoned from ag to SF1 to SF whatever.
yeah.
And we have it on the books that those will eventually probably be built, especially if we have plats and other stuff coming forward. So we're not,
We're good,
prepared for
we're
that.
good, we're good for a while. That build out includes all the property that hasn't been rezoned, hasn't been platted.
but at max like residential capacity or at max what like how do you guys estimate the future? Because
We
somebody coming in with an apartment complex for 1,000 units, let's just say,
Mhm.
for whatever reason, is a lot different than SF1 or urban estates,
That's correct.
I would imagine. So
So what's happened over the years is, as you know, is that the lots have gotten smaller, development's more dense, and that's why we're looking at increasing the line sizes.
Okay.
Because that's already happened.
so worst case scenarios.
That's already happening. And what we do is we use the future land use plans that's developed by planning to estimate the flows.
Well, but then
And it's continually updated.
we kind of learned our lesson last meeting with what the future land use is, what somebody wants to bring into it. It was geared for urban estates, but somebody wanted to bring however many hundreds of units into it,
Right.
completely different scenario. So I don't,
Yeah, that one's a little tougher because that was an area that was just
it was
annexed.
horrible anyway, but
You know,
yeah.
it's.
But I'm just saying, like, what the future land use is, we're not, obviously not continuing, we're not 100% sticking to that. So if we're planning based off of that, are we adding the 10%? You know what I mean? Like, it's,
Yeah,
I think we have the resources and the availability for spending $5 million on a landscape project to get ahead of where we've already planned for the development coming in as
Mhm.
far as the utilities are concerned. And if that hasn't been, we maybe should start thinking about cost sharing that with the developer to ensure that we're meeting that as it grows in order for them to get approval for those things,
I'm
not
with you.
just their space, but
I'm with you. We're there. We're working towards it.
Okay.
So that's what I think about when I wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning.
same. And I don't even do the
Water,
job.
wastewater, drainage and streets. That's all I think about. So, yeah.
Yes, sir. All right. I just want to make sure we're thinking, because the reason I say this is because I went to the briefing for TxDOT for the highway coming through for
Mhm.
I-14. Their numbers were based off of best case scenario. Like they were taking their data points from like the average of 7 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon instead of all of 7 o'clock in the morning and all of 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Those are completely different data points. The
Mhm.
worst congested traffic versus an average of traffic. People are concerned and get frustrated over the worst part of traffic, the 7 and the 5, not the noon.
Yeah.
So
There's no problem during the middle
yeah.
of the rest of the day.
So, okay. I'll shut up now. Thank you.
It's a good question though, because we just went through it in the last year or so of reevaluating all the densities and the land uses, for the water and wastewater systems.
Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Moving on to the next item. We already have volunteers for the invocation and the pledge by Commissioner Krause and Commissioner McBride respectively. And now we will hear regarding affidavits from Mrs. Gover.
Commissioners, for the record, no affidavits to abstain have been received for this meeting. Is this correct?
That's correct. Awesome. And with no further business, we will close the workshop at 5:20.
Done. Recording.
So I just want to test that the folks on the Zoom platform, if you're online, give me a thumbs up that you can hear us through the microphone. Thank you, Councilmember Grant.
We'll move to the consent items. On the consent agenda is the approval of items 4 and 5. Commissioners, if there are no objections, I'll entertain a motion. Our motion is made by Commissioner Morales and a second by Commissioner Jeans to approve items 4 and 5 on the consent agenda. May we have a vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Morales.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
Commissioner Krause. Aye. Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Jeans.
Aye.
Vice Chair McBride.
Aye.
Chair Marshall.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous and the motion carries.
Thank you, Kathy. With that, we'll move to item number 6, FY-24-29-ZC. Hold a public hearing to consider and recommend action on a conditional use permit to allow a recreational vehicle park on 74.3 acres located in the Maximo Marino Survey. Abstract number 14 in the city of Temple, Texas, addressed as 16801 and 16803 Northeast HK Dodge and Loop. This case will be presented by Transportation Planner Jason Deckman.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. You see on your screen the council schedule. This will go to council for first reading and the public hearing on August 1st with second reading on August 15th. So as you stated, the address is on Loop 363. So on the vicinity map, you see this is located in the northeast part of Temple, adjacent to the city limits and the ETJ boundary. It's north of Lavandusky Drive, south of East Young, and fairly close to Loop 363. On the aerial photo, you see that the land is not currently developed. It's being used for agricultural purposes. There's some lightly wooded areas and it borders the creek to the east. So normally we will do site photos because it was located quite a ways back from the highway, didn't get site photos directly on the property. So there's some views of Loop 363 aimed towards the subject property, and then used Google Earth to give a better view of the surrounding area. So to the west, you've got the Oak Ridge subdivision, which is under construction. You've got Hector Garcia Elementary School south here by Lavandusky Drive. And on the east, you see it's, as I stated, mostly agricultural land or homes on large acreage. And again, there's that creek, that drainage that flows along the backside of the proposed RV park. So Chapter 31 of the Code of Ordinances covers RV parks. There's some requirements and restrictions within that code. The first is the density. So they're proposing 150 pads or spaces to be constructed in 2 phases of 75 units each. So the maximum density is 7 spaces per acre. This is at 4.85, so it does meet that standard. Our code does not allow permanent residents. Some of us have stayed in RV parks where they have skirting and wooden decks and steps, and this is not the case here. Our code limits the stay to a maximum of 6 months. It does require certain amenities. Showers, bathroom, and laundry facilities are to be provided in the clubhouse. They're also proposing a pool, playground, walking paths, and a dog park. As the applicant has stated, this is intended to be a luxury RV park with the amenities they're providing and the surroundings that they'll be developing in. Our code doesn't make a distinction of whether it's luxury or otherwise market rate. So the code requirements are, I'll say, more strict. This luxury is more of a subjective determination. There will be a subdivision plat required because the floodplain to the east will have to evaluate for drainage. They're also proposing septic. And I'm showing the site plan. We'll have a bigger view of the site plan on the next slide. And the septic design is subject to approval by the Bell County Health Department. And the subdivision plat would also cover any access or right of way or water. The main entrance is going to be called Middle Road. It follows a thoroughfare plan alignment, and that will connect out to Loop 363 as you see up here on the inset. There is an optional entrance shown here on the site plan that would also face towards Loop 363. And that was in discussion with the fire marshal to have an optional outlet in case of emergency. You're not bottlenecked into one way in and one way out. That would be available when and if the property between the RV park and the loop ever comes in for development, then that connection could be made. So here's a better view of the site plan. Start at the top. You've got Elm Creek that flows along, forms the city limit boundaries. They've identified a large area for detention, 2 large areas shown in green for the septic to handle 150 camper units. The main entrance would be down here, so they're showing a widened entrance with turn lanes to allow those vehicles to enter and exit smoothly. Dumpster location right here at the front. There's walking trails, around the perimeter through the center where the clubhouse is. And at that clubhouse, that's where you would have washing, laundry facilities, washers and dryers, shower units, and there's a pool, covered pavilion, playground areas for cornhole or bocce. There's additional parking at the clubhouse and near the pool. There's also required parking spaces at each pad. There's a detail on the site plan that shows where you would have the pull-in pad for the RV or trailer with an additional parking spot for either a towed vehicle or the vehicle that's towing the trailer. So you can come in and out as you please. So the thoroughfare plan, we do have a future community collector that crosses this property. It starts to the east at follows Middle Road, follows Chief the Land Road, and then it comes into the city limits. And what the applicant is proposing is to follow this alignment, but just move it north. So they would use that future community collector. They would construct that road. That would be part of the subdivision plat. That would give them that wide entrance into the RV park. It would give the city a portion of the thoroughfare plan, but that would end, as you see here, and it would end in a cul-de-sac. They're not proposing to construct a bridge over the creek. We are not proposing a capital improvement project to build that bridge right now. So this would be a dead-end cul-de-sac street for the time being, and it would serve only as the entrance to the RV park. TxDOT, we've notified them, and they've said that the traffic impact analysis would likely be required. They'll have to apply for a drive entrance permit to Loop 363, and they'll make that determination once they see the subdivision plat. So this would require an amendment to the thoroughfare plan, and as of right now, staff is in support of making that amendment. It doesn't change the classification, it just shifts the alignment. The water supply on the bottom half of this slide, that is going to be a challenge for this project. As you can see, there's some Little Elm Valley Rural Water Supply Company facilities going off of Dare Road and East Monroe. But this project would be in the City of Temple CCN, and they've asked for city water and preliminary discussions with our engineers that it should be possible to extend from Lavandusky, follow the right way up, and then make their water utility connection that way. Again, that will be confirmed. Those designs will be reviewed with the subdivision plat and the engineering plan review that comes in with that subdivision. So we did do some traffic analysis on this part of the loop. So first is how much traffic would an RV park add? Those that follow this part of our analysis know that typically we looked at the weekday, all day long peak hour, or excuse me, the volume for traffic of the full weekday. For whatever reason, the Institute for Traffic Engineers doesn't provide a weekday volume for RV parks. They provided AM and PM peak hour and peak hour traffic on adjacent roads. That table is in your report. The highest of those categories was the PM peak hour. So that was 61 trips in the afternoon peak. And theoretically, that would be people showing up to the campground, or at the end they're leaving. That's my theory. I'm not an RV parker, so if I'm wrong, please correct me. But for purposes of comparing apples to apples, the same amount of units for multifamily or single family in that PM peak hour, multifamily would be expected to generate 85 trips in that afternoon, and single family units would generate up to 149. So comparatively speaking, an RV park is a low traffic generator. HK Dodge and Loop, also known as Loop 363, is a major arterial with a capacity of between 20,000 and 40,000 daily trips. The current volume is just under 8,500. So there's capacity there. TxDOT has stated that they do want to look at expanding this side of the loop to match the side that's on the industrial park with the frontage road main lane section. No word on when that's going to get funded. They've just started looking at the basic concept. To my knowledge, they haven't even funded schematic designs yet, but it's on their radar as development comes in that they've recognized there's a need at some point to continue that expressway around Temple. As for safety analysis, selected the area from East Young down to Lavandusky. You see not much of a surprise that the two main intersections are the two hot spots, with a minor hot spot where Hillcrest Road and 42nd Street join in here in the middle. In that area is 47 crashes in the last 5 years, 0 fatal injuries or 0 fatal crashes, 2 serious injuries, 11 minor injuries. The common factors were failure to yield or disregard stop sign, driver inattention, or speeding. So we sent out 5 notices to owners of properties within 200 feet within the city limits. 3 courtesy notices were sent to properties in the ETJ. We did receive 1 notice back. Mr. and Mrs. Halverson are online with us tonight. The concerns that they raised in their letter and the phone call that I had with them, there's the drop off of the bluffs along the creek could be a safety hazard, that they don't want to see trespassing or littering from the back of the park over onto their property. They spoke with the applicant via email. The applicant said they'd be happy to install a fence. But in speaking with them this afternoon, they're still in opposition to an RV park adjacent to their property. We sent 3 other notices to properties in ETJ, but we've only received the 1 notice back from the Halversons. We printed the notice on July 4th, 2024 in accordance with state law and local ordinance. So conditional use permit, this is the boilerplate for all CUPs in City Temple, that the council may deny or revoke a CUP if it's determined to be incompatible with surrounding uses, detrimental or offensive to the neighborhood, or contrary to health and safety. The Planning Zoning Commission may recommend and City Council may impose additional conditions of approval. We do have a few conditions with the CUP. And the permittee must demonstrate that the granting of the permit would not be detrimental to the public welfare. And there is a site development plan, which you've seen. So to summarize the compliance, the answer is yes, it's compatible, doesn't impede other normal development. Adequate utilities, that's partial. Obviously, that's going to be a long water line that they would have to construct, but it would be at their expense. But the connection is available there. Does allow for safe and convenient movement of traffic and odors, directional lighting, and sufficient landscaping. So staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit to allow recreational vehicle park at 16801 and 16803 Northeast HK Dodge and Loop, subject to the following conditions. I'm going to take a drink while you read this briefly. So as you can see, number 1 is ongoing compliance with Chapter 31. Our code compliance folks are out there every day, keeping an eye out for violations. And if there's complaints that would cause a conflict with Chapter 31, they would certainly become aware of it. That compliance with the site plan that's shown as Exhibit A. If there was major changes to that site plan, that might be something that would come back. As stated, they will be required to have a subdivision plat prior to getting any building permits to start constructing the RV park, which would include the septic designs, the drainage, any right-of-way dedication, and approval from TxDOT. That there will be a note on the plat referencing this ordinance, so there's no confusion. Requiring that alternate 41-foot design at the connection to Middle Road, and that comes straight from our subdivision entry standards for 150 units. They need that widened entrance. To require a 6-foot sidewalk on one side of that new road that they're building, that new section of Middle Road from the highway. That is standard for any community collector. Requiring a floor plan for the clubhouse with the building permits, and that'll show the detail of where the washers and dryers and showers and laundry facilities and all that will be. And as stated, minor variations and significant modifications may either be approved by the director or will come back to this commission and go to City Council. So that concludes my presentations. I'll take any questions you may have. And I'll note, looking at the that Lena Chite, the applicant, has just joined us. And Zoe's saying she can't see slides. I am sharing screen. Let's try that. Should be going. Yeah, I'm seeing it on my side. So I'll take any questions you may have.
That middle road, is it, so Oak Ridge subdivision across the way? That doesn't have any access to the 363, does it? On the east, on the west side of,
No, I want to say that there was one general retail or otherwise commercial lot down here in this little corner that possibly could. But all the residential access would come off of Lavandusky or 42nd Street.
that commercial could, and is it gonna be directly across from where they're proposing theirs? Do we know?
Theirs is probably going to be a little bit north of that little triangle.
And TxDOT's gonna require traffic analysis, correct?
They've said they probably will. He didn't give a solid answer. He's kind of deferring until they submit the subdivision plat. That's typically when they make that determination, because then they have the meets and bounds and the right of way to determine the point of entrance.
I'm just concerned about having a turn lane, deacceleration lane, because this will go up quicker than TxDOT will get that widened, so. Probably.
So I think what you're saying is what's the timing of which side has an entrance first?
Well, just not having, I mean, it doesn't matter, like if you're gonna have an entrance on one side, on the west side, going to the residential, commercial. And they're trying to go north or south, and then you have the RVs coming out that cannot accelerate or slow down quickly or as easily. They're trying to come out morning or evening, depending on when they are scheduled to arrive. That there's a potential for a situation. Plus the added 18-wheeler traffic that's coming in because of the 14 and Buc-ee's, not Buc-ee's, but
Yeah.
building behind Buc-ee's. So
I can't speak directly for what the developers, the engineers would be willing to do. But that may be something that we could discuss during the subdivision planning process, because they're gonna have to dedicate the right of way for that street. And we're not making the thoroughfare plan amendment now because I don't have the dedicated right of way for that alignment. There may be an opportunity to look at where that, I want to say it's general retail.
yeah, if I remember correctly, you're right. I know that you said it.
It'll be on the, I clipped it off, so I don't know. There may be an opportunity to look at that to line those two up.
And I was,
Promise that we'll look at it. I can't promise that they're gonna fit.
that'd be my only. Given that those two developments are so close to each other.
Right.
And what's coming in, what this is trying to bring in. I drive an RV and they're not as easy as people think sometimes.
Right. That being said, that commercial triangle over, get back to my area. That commercial triangle has been sitting there for a couple of years, has not developed yet. So I think it's going to come down to timing. When they, when the owner finds a retail tenant that wants to build there, when the RV park engineer manages to design and fund the water line extension and get the TxDOT approval, neither of those things is going to happen overnight.
I would just recommend
think
if we can
we've-
make them line up and then
Yeah.
potentially put a light there, it would make more sense than having them offset. Because we don't have a divided highway as far as curb or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah,
So
right now it's just 2 lanes.
there's no way to, it'd make more sense to have a raised median. If you come in out of the residential, commercial, and you want to go north, you got to come down and make a U-turn and go north. But since that doesn't exist,
Yeah, just to clarify, the residential doesn't have any.
Right, but the you don't know, the
commercial.
commercial could bring in
Could, yeah,
all kinds of stuff
right.
and a lot of traffic, so. Okay. Future thought for the smart.
No, it's a perfectly reasonable thing. We'll keep that in mind.
Do we have any authority to dictate these entrances and exits on TxDOT roads, or is TxDOT manages all of that?
They manage all of it. We got input. We can, not to make a pun, but we can steer that.
But can we make a condition? Potentially?
I think we could. I mean, I'm gonna look at the attorney.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that's regulated by TxDOT.
Well, and I'm just gonna think out loud here briefly. Because what they'll evaluate it for site stopping distance and the speed limit and spacing from any other access points, which really there's none right now. There's some driveways that, connect off, for the agricultural lots. So I think we could make a condition. But if I was gonna make a condition, I'd want to have some code basis to make that. Again, I'm a planner, you guys aren't. But something that would be objectively enforceable to say, put that entrance where it's safe, which is what you're trying to say. I'd argue that the TxDOT access standards are going to do that it's going to be reviewed, that if it does warrant those turn lanes, they'll be instructed to add those.
And I assume TxDOT consults the city when that impact analysis goes through, so you can say, hey, yes, there's a development, there's potential commercial coming in across the way. So they're not oblivious to that.
Right.
And I say that because when I talked to TxDOT at the I-14, a lot of them that I talked to weren't aware that big development at Bend of the River beyond the bend was potentially coming in through all of their plans, and they were like, oh, well, that's not good news. So the reason
The local office does. So the folks that you and I talked to were not locals.
but they should
Have done their homework. I got you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. My other question is, I read the Halversons, their refutal for this, and they're concerned about a potential cliff in the creek area there.
Yeah,
I looked at the
Mr.
3D
Halverson
map,
said-
it looked a little deeper than just a stream. So is there a perimeter requirement?
There's not a perimeter requirement in the code. The engineer did say in the email they'd be happy to put in a fence. To your question, if there was a condition you wanted to apply, that would be a great opportunity to add that. And I'll note, both the engineer, Lena, has her hand up, and the Halversons are online, so I'm sure they'd like to speak their mind on it too. I'm not going to speak for them.
I read their
Yeah.
rebuttal back. So.
Before we go to public hearing, I guess I got three things. Make sure I understand correctly. I know this development comes with it's Middle Road, is the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
Developer installed through TxDOT, but TxDOT can't analyze that until they submit a plat, why would they prepare a plat if they didn't have the conditional use permit to put this in?
Right. If the conditional use permit was denied, then we'd stop. Yeah.
Okay.
They could apply for the TxDOT entrance permit separate from the plat. Typically, they come together.
Second item of it, the water supply. So they don't want the little M Valley water supply court. So they're going to bore under 363 to
That's the
bring
plan.
water over. Purely developer side of things.
Yes.
Okay. And similarly, why would they plan for that if they didn't have the conditional use permit to have the use that they want? Okay. Just making sure we weren't cart before the horse, if
Right.
that makes sense, between access and water supply. My other item is I'm just kind of seeing the location of this. It's, it's the luxury, they called it a luxury RV park. It's kind of in a different spot. It's not exactly a tourism spot. How does our code of ordinance address extended stay beyond 6 months?
That's a code compliance issue. They would do surveys. There'd be, if there was a complaint, they could check the records.
But I mean, I guess you just
Yeah.
re-up for another 6 months. I guess is that,
You know, the
Or move a
code's,
spot
we've looked
over.
at that. The code's kind of silent on it.
I appreciate it. Were any of those questions, I guess, directed enough to the client or to the property owner to open them up prior to public hearing, or you wanna?
I think, I mean, Lena had her hand up. So if you wanted to ask the applicant questions and then open the public hearing, you could do that, or you could open the public hearing.
Okay.
And she could respond in turn.
We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing if there's no more questions or comments from the commission. Okay. This case does require a public hearing. We will now open up the public hearing, and if you wish to speak and are attending in person, please come to the podium. If you're viewing the meeting online, please virtually raise your hand and please state your full name and residence for the record, and we ask that you hold your comments to 3 minutes. With none in person, Jason, I guess we'll go to.
So I'll open it up to the folks online if someone wants to raise their hand and go first. I think it probably would be reasonable to invite the Halversons to speak first, and then we can turn to the engineer.
Sounds great.
Good evening. Are we on here now?
Yes, sir. Can y'all hear them well enough?
Up a little bit for us.
For some reason, it's not coming through the overhead tonight.
Yeah, we can't really see what's going on this end. We got some of the slides and stuff like that, so we're good. I'm James Halverson. My wife Amy Halverson is here next to us. We live at 3200 Chief DeLand. We own the property adjacent on the north side of that slide that's showing. We share a property boundary with the proposed RV park. We're just concerned with, from previous experiences with trespassing. We know in Texas that water draws people. There's a creek there that runs year round. We know that RVers, the fence is only going to keep honest people honest. Directly north of that property line, there's only about 15 to 20 feet of property before it drops. I mean, straight off 20 to 23 feet into a bedrock bottom creek. Like if a kid goes over or something like that, and at night there's no seeing it, it's dark down there. It's going to be bad. That's our concern. We spoke with Lena on the phone or via email, actually, that they did address it and say that they would put up a fence. We're still concerned downstream as the creek flows away from our property, the access to the creek. Is there going to be some type of water gate, because we have an active cattle ranch and the cattle graze all that property. And we're concerned with trespassers coming up that creek onto our property. So that's our main concern.
Last 10% of that, Jason. So
So we're having some audio issues. I've got the mic down here on the floor next to the computer. They mentioned that they're a working cattle ranch. They have cattle grazing out there. And the concern is that, people come across the creek and trespass, could either injure the cattle or be injured themselves, as well as debris and litter down the creek. Go ahead, James.
Amy and our main focus is that cliff back there on the creek. I mean, I know where it is, and I have almost fallen off of it. And it's 23 feet in places down to dead bedrock. Like there's no slope to break your fall. It is dangerous back there. I have since tried to contain the cattle onto the north side of that creek, but that boundary of that RV park is going to be within about 25 or 30 feet of that cliff. And that I don't want to be held responsible for trespassers falling and getting injured back there, because it's going to be hard to get them out. To get medical personnel in there is going to be, it's going to be a long response time. It's just a major concern of ours is innocent kids not knowing and falling off back there.
Valid concern. The property line split down the creek?
The city limits run down the creek. The property lines kind of crisscross it. Let me go to the notification map. You kind of get a better idea.
Right where that letter D is, south and east of that letter D, that black line proposed there at the edge of the hash marks on the north side, that's the property boundary. The property boundary to that cliff is probably less than 20 feet in areas. And it's a 20-foot cliff, 20 to 23 foot for several hundred feet there. And there's no warning. It's thick, dense brush, and all of a sudden there's no ground there. So it's just one that I'm concerned with, innocent patrons. I know fences help, but I just know that there's going to be problems back there.
Aside from the safety concern, you're also just opposed just for the use, just the adjacent use as well, correct?
Yes, I mean, the noise that's going to be back there. I mean, we bought this property because of its seclusion, and we understand that change is a constant in this world. We just never foreseen. I mean, we've started platting our forever home right under them big pecan trees that 200-foot line goes through, right to an inch to the right of that letter D. And I understand that, that's unfortunate for us. So we do understand that, but in the end, we do not want to see an RV park there. We will strongly oppose it forever.
Understood.
Lena has her hand up.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Jason, would you please put the site plan up? Would you please display the site plan on the screen?
There you are.
Yeah, so we do have first of all, Amy and James, thank you for your email and concern, and I do agree with you. I know exactly about the cliff. I know what's there. We've driven the property multiple times, and I've seen it. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I want to say something here that first point is that between your property and the RV park, there is a good, there's quite a bit of area that is left green. So at least to provide some buffer. The reason the road is shown where it's shown because of the city thoroughfare plan, and that came from discussing that with the planning department. About the cliff, as you see, that area highlighted in green, that's a septic field. So that area is going to be double fenced. So not only that the RV is going to have fence around it, because we don't want anybody to be roaming in the septic field. The area also in the back of the septic field, between the septic field and the creek, will also be fenced. And if the commissioner is willing to add that as a condition tonight, that will not be a problem at all, because that's what we're going to be doing for mainly for safety. And no one is going to have an access to that creek. So no one can be trespassing through the creek, because we are not providing an access to the creek at all. We are maintaining all activities and amenities within the park itself. So I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has for me.
So you're saying you're willing to put a fence around the park itself, like in between the septic fields, the detention area, and the actual
Correct.
park, kind of where the blue line is drawn?
Yes, that is true. And that is because that's a septic. First of all, that's a septic field. So we're not willing for anybody. I mean, we're gonna have sprayers in there. And we don't want people to be walking those fields at all. I mean, it will not be safe. We can be taking chance of people breaking the spray heads, and we don't want no one to be accessing the creek because it is steep in there. So that area will be double fenced. That the septic field will be fenced and the park itself will be fenced.
What's the height of the fence gonna be that you have planned?
6 to 8 feet. If 8 feet is what's preferenced, we're willing to go the 8 feet height.
Is that for all fencing to the east, I guess you could say? So
Yes, correct.
anything bordering septic line or septic fields, and then
And the
on the
creek
other
field,
side of the septic fields as well.
correct. Yeah.
Yep.
For sure, that the idea of this RV park, the reason we're saying this is a luxury RV park, we want this to be. So yes, there's probably no tourism areas nearby, but we do see the need, and the location is good. It's very close to the highway. However, when this RV park is built, you're not going to be able to see it from the from the loop. You can't see it. The topo rolls down well enough from the loop. You're not going to be able to see it. It's so it gives some privacy, which we try to do, even though we have 34 acres, I believe. Our intention here is not just to maximize the number of RV parks or RV spots we can squeeze in there. We do want it to look like a park. We located the trees that we could save, and we planned the park around the existing trees. I mean, we're going to be adding some trees as per code, but we want to also save the existing trees because we want it to look like a very, very nice park. And we're going to be setting the high standards for this park because we don't want it to attract, we don't want it to be attracting old trailers. We want to keep it family friendly.
So to make it a little easier, sorry to you. If we've had a condition where the external fence of the entire RV perimeter was 8 foot, and
Mhm.
then there was a 6-foot fence around the actual park itself, or where the RVs actually stay, would that be, so you had a 6-foot fence to get outside of the RV spaces, and then an 8-foot fence surrounding the septic fields and then the creek. So essentially you have to jump 2 fences to get anywhere near the creek.
That's exactly what I had in mind. I had in mind 2 fences. So what you're proposing is very reasonable.
Okay. Chain link is acceptable. So
If we,
the Halversons are. That's the Halversons.
yeah, I don't know if we're still, if we can still speak or not.
Yeah, it's open. Would that be,
It's-
would you think that would be as close to sufficient as a safety mitigation for the?
Yes, as far as the
It's
safety
6.
litigation, that's all we can ask. Like you can, fences only keep honest people honest, and that's old fashioned saying. It's my concern, that she's talking about the septic field here that's in green. That's proposed. Has this been approved by the Bell County Health Department? Because I've worked closely with the Bell County Health Department building 3 houses on my property, and they're pretty strict on waterways and water wells as to where septic fields go. I've permitted 3 in the last 3 years on my property, and there's extensive, so like it's proposed here for this meeting, but I would like to see, according to where this green is, I can tell you right now, that's not going to meet the Bell County Health Department standard for how far they want septic fields away from that creek. So that's, is that going to push the RV park closer so that the septic can then be on the west side, closer to the loop? That's my concern with this site map that we're looking at today.
Jason,
James,
that
what
would trigger
design? I'm sorry.
potential deviation.
It would, hang on, Lena. Yeah, to the question about the septic permit, those are approved with the plat. The plat normally has a signature block for the county sanitarian that they have reviewed and approved the designs, the soil conditions, proximity to the creek. So they will review that. This goes back to Chair Marshall's earlier question about if the conditional use permit were denied, then they would not move forward. So they haven't submitted anything to, design the water lines, design the sewer septic systems as of today.
But we're gonna have to see that plat and
Correct.
recommend approval as council following all of that.
And
There's another stop in place prior to
right.
council voting for approval.
And I think someone was starting to say that, to Mr. Halverson's comment, if that septic design didn't match what is shown on here, then that would very likely be a significant change from the site plan and it would come back for review.
Right. Okay.
Were you? Okay. Every time I see the lawyer sit straight up, I start to think ought to be corrected.
I'm going to turn the meeting off if he's sitting up.
Lena, I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off earlier. You were going to start to say something. Please go ahead.
So we've designed in the past RV parks with septic fields, and I agree with James that there are certain criteria that has to be followed when you are close to a creek, and which we did. Even in this preliminary layout, we are 75 feet away from the creek center line, which is what's required by code. So James, even though this has not been fully approved by Bell County Health Department, we've worked with them in the past on several projects that we kind of we know the rules, and like Jason mentioned, if this is to have a significant change, it will come back before everyone for an amended site plan and approval.
Make sure I understand. If there's a significant change, that brings back this meeting for the conditional use permit. But regardless, there's another plat that's gonna come before us for this piece.
Correct. Yeah. If they come in with the subdivision plat and the septic designs match this, more than likely, and I'm hedging my bets here. No, it would come back before, because there's a dedication of right of way and there's extension of utilities. So the lawyer's nodding her head yes, so I've got it right. So yeah, you would see the plat.
There's another discussion to be had for this prior to even approving to move forward.
Yes, sir.
This is just, yeah. Okay.
For the Halverson's benefit, there's a difference between a rezoning or conditional use permit that requires the public hearing. The plat does not require the public hearing.
Right.
And y'all in the past have taken questions from the public, but just the law and the code doesn't require that same public hearing or notification for the subdivision plat. I'm not seeing anyone else with hands raised, going once or going twice.
We will go ahead and close the public hearing. And commissioners, if there's no more questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll entertain a motion, or I'll make a motion to approve FY-24-29-ZC with the conditions presented by staff and add conditions where there is a 6-foot minimum perimeter fence around the RV space of the park and an 8-foot chain link fence around the perimeter of the property being used that includes the septic fields and detention pond. Does that make sense? Legal?
Privacy fence.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would just say,
Just fencing.
Material, something.
Okay.
8-foot approved fence.
So yeah, an 8-foot privacy fence around the RV area, just privacy fence is okay, correct?
yeah,
I would leave it
I
vague
don't
and
think
just
that I would
fence.
even go so far as to say
Okay.
privacy. I would just say fence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So I'll redo that. Make a motion to approve FY-24-29-ZC with the conditions presented by staff and adding the condition of an 8-foot perimeter fence around the RV space of the park. Or 6-foot perimeter fence around the RV space of the park and an 8-foot perimeter fence around the entire facility, specifically where the septic and drainage fields are located.
I think we can work with that.
Okay. Thank you.
1 second, I'm making notes, I'm sorry.
I am too.
I'm just gonna add it to this right now so that I don't lose it. JD knows what a PowerPoint Ranger is, and I'm one.
Okay, a motion has been made by Commissioner McBride with the added conditions of a 6-foot fence around the RV portion of the park and an 8-foot fence around the property boundary, specifically around the septic and detention fields. And that motion was seconded by Commissioner Krause to recommend approval of FY-2429ZC to City Council for the initial recommendation from staff. May we have a vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Morales. Aye. Commissioner Walker. Commissioner Krause. Aye. Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Jeans. Vice Chair McBride.
Aye.
Chair Marshall.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous and the motion carries.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Having no further business, we will close the meeting at 6:21.